Alright, let's get started with what I expect will be the first of several videos about the Patchbay. We're going to start very basic. Again, if you are familiar with how the Patchbay and all the patch points works, this may not be the one for you. There are many videos out there on interesting combinations of patches and different things you can do to get neat effects. But for me, that didn't help me in understanding what was going on in the instrument. And so what I had to do was actually just take each patch point one at a time and figure out how voltage affects it. So that's what I'm going to do with you here. Might be long, might not be terribly interesting, but I know for me it was incredibly valuable to understand what exactly the electricity is doing. We're going to use just the basic cable that came with your instrument. Maybe you had 5 of these. They're pretty short. It's a mono cable, so it just has one black ring here. You might compare this to an aux cable like you would use in your car. This one has 2 as opposed to 1. So this is a TR tip ring. This is tip ring and sleeve TRS. This carries a mono signal. This carries a stereo signal. So we want to use mono cables. This is what came with your Behringer. On the left-hand side, we have inputs. These are all the different things that we can control with electricity. And on the right, we have all the different sources of electrical signals. And that includes our audio, the VCA line, and then our headphone jack right here. We're going to start with one that's very basic. And if we come down here, it's the VC mix knob. This is one that we've ignored until now because it really only has a function when we begin patching. Up here, you'll see mix 1, mix 2. And so we could send a signal into mix 1 and another signal into mix 2. And then as we rotate this knob, mix 1, mix 2, we would hear the output depending on which side we were turned to, or we could mix the two at varying degrees. It works similarly to this mix knob. The difference, when nothing is patched into it, it produces a 0 to 5 volt range. And that's going to be really useful for our purposes today because we're going to apply that range to each patch point on the left-hand side on the inputs to see what it does. Output of VC mix. Don't confuse that with the VC mix over here. This is an input. We're going to take the output of VC mix and we're going to send it, to the first place, Oscillator CV. And this controls the pitch of our instrument. Alright, so here we go. 4th octave, C. As I increase voltage, I should increase pitch. It gets pretty high. And bring it back down. Now, Oscillator CV is a 1 volt per octave patch, which means each time I apply 1 volt to it, the pitch will increase by 1 octave. And we're going to demonstrate this using our tuner that we used back in episode 1, I think it was. I'm going to plug that into the output of my headphones jack. Send it into the input of my tuner. Turn that on. There we go. All right. Now, this is back at 0. We're getting a C. A little sharp. Okay. Now, as I add voltage, this will go up. And it goes up pretty high. But now let's find those volts. Right now we're adding 0 volts. When we get to the next C, we'll have added 1 volt. Okay, we're a little low. It's finicky. Yeah. Okay, that's 1 octave, 1 volt. 2 volts. 3 volts. 4 volts. 5 volts. Let's see if we can squeeze some more out of it. And we max out about there. So it's a little more than 5 volts. Okay, so we can see exactly how 1 volt per octave works. Now again, I just want to clarify, there are a lot of different ways we can modulate this, probably more interesting ones. But today, we're just seeing how changes in voltage affect each patch point. Let's move to the next one, oscillator FM. This is one that the book does a terrible job explaining. If you go to your manual on page 17, oscillator FM, oscillator frequency modulation. Well, it doesn't tell you anything. So let's discover what happens. There's the same pitch we had before. I'm going to start adding electricity to it. Doesn't seem like anything happens, does it? How this one works is it reacts to changes in voltage. You'll hear it went up. As I turn it, it goes up. As I stop turning it, it drops back down. And if I go the other direction, a drop in voltage causes the note to drop briefly. When we start modulating that using other sources, we'll also discover that it doesn't cover such a wide range. Sending the LFO to the oscillator CV will give us a 10 octave range, while sending that same LFO triangle to the oscillator FM will give us maybe a range of a perfect fifth. Let's move on to OsMod. Oscillator mod. We're familiar with this knob. You'll notice in the toggle, this side says LFO, we've used that one. This side says envelope, which we've also used, and then / oscillator mod. Let's get that toggle out of the way so you can see that. Oscillator mod, that refers to the patch point. So if you have some CV, some control voltage passed into here, it will override the envelope. So right now we're going to modulate using VC Mix. Here we go. Wait, nothing happened. That's because this is at 0. Let's put it there so we actually have something to control. Let's modulate our width and our sawtooth. Or our square wave, sorry. So we can hear that increase and go back to 0. And of course we can use the oscillator mod to affect frequency as well. We can change the destination of the oscillator mod. And it adds 5 volts to whatever that changes. Of course, if I set this modulation shorts to LFO, this is then bypassed. We're not getting anything from it. Good. VC cutoff, or the VCF cutoff. That, of course, refers to our filter. As I add voltage, it will open up the filter. VCF resonance. Now this is another one that is not internally patched. What this will do is it will increase this level. So if I set it to about here, we won't hear much. But if I was to turn this up, we'll hear that higher note increase. I'm going to do the same thing here using VC Mix. So that's a way of modulating the resonance knob, which we do not have a way to do on just the panel itself. I'm going to skip Mix 1, Mix 2 for now, also VC Mix in and the multiple. We'll come back to those. Come over here to Mix CV. That refers to this knob here. This is the one where if it's set all the way to the left, I hear the oscillator. If it's turned all the way to the right, I'm currently hearing the noise generator. If I set it to the middle, I get a mix of both. I can modulate that knob using control voltage. You can hear some noise come in. Because this is all the way to the left, this doesn't apply enough to overcome it entirely. But set it to the middle. Right there we can get a pretty clean switch with hardly any oscillator in the sound. Okay. Next we have external audio. Now you might have seen this and thought, oh, I could just plug my CD player into this. Unfortunately not. This is also expecting a plus or minus 5 volt signal. So if you tried plugging your, MP3 player into this or something, that has a lower than 1 volt output. So this really won't pick it up. What this is good for is picking up signals coming from our Patchbay. So what I could do is I could send the output of, say, the saw wave to the external audio. Now, external audio is overriding the noise generator on this side of our mix knob. So I can take VC Mix, come back to Mix CV, but this time what I'm going to hear is an alternation of my pulse wave in oscillator and my saw wave in the external. So you can hear the difference between those two waves. I'll narrow up the pulse so it's a little more obvious. I'll also cut this so we can hear the difference between the two waves. So we could send any of our pulses or any of our sound sources into external audio so that we can get that mixture. Let's take that guy out for now. Next, we have several knobs that have to do with the sequencer, several patch points, excuse me, that have to do with the sequencer. Tempo, play stop, reset, and hold. Tempo is this one down here. And for this, we're going to make a little sequence. We're going to make the most basic sequence possible. I'm going to press record, and then I'm going to play a scale. And then I'm going to press record again. All right, so I have just recorded that little 8-note scale. Now I'm going to push play. Apparently it's swinging. If you want to get rid of that swing, press shift. Turn that to the left. Okay, now it's much more straight. And then I can transpose this. My oscillator mod's up. Couldn't figure out why that was so low. There's a decent range. Alright, so now we're playing a little C major scale. Tempo is controlled by this knob here, and this blinking light shows you what speed we're going. So when this is down, it's really slow. As I turn it up, I go faster and faster. But this is a knob that I can also control using control voltage. I can take the VC Mix out, add it to the tempo patch. Now, if you're following along and you just tried that one and it didn't work for you, you'll be in the same boat that I was. There's an internal setting on your Crave that I believe can only be accessed by plugging it into your computer via USB and using the Behringer synth tool. What you have to do is you have to set the clock in to CV as opposed to internal clock, which is what it defaults to. So, I mean, you'll look up in your book and it'll see, oh, if you press Shift, Hold, and 8, you can set the clock. Yes, you can do that, but it won't actually solve the CV patch problem. So, if that one's causing you trouble and you haven't figured it out, leave a comment and I'll answer and try to describe it a little more carefully than I just did. However, so that's how we control our tempo using control voltage. Now the next three sequencer patches are merely on and off. And so what happens is when you apply a voltage greater than 3.2 volts, this activates, this activates, this activates. So it's either on or off. I'll show you what I mean. Play, stop. VC mix to play, stop. Right now, we're stopped. Voltage is at 0. But when I get to 3.2, oh, it's playing. And when I drop it below 3.2, it stops. So you can already start thinking of applications for this. You plug your LFO into your play pause, and as it increases and decreases, it's turning on and off at different rates. Now, if we go to reset, reset starts your sequence back over at the beginning. So I'm going to start playing it manually. Once I get past 3.2, it'll jump back to the bottom C. If I just stay there, it keeps resetting. If I quickly jump over there, so that's how that one works. And then in hold, this will stay on the current step of your sequence when it gets more than 3.2 volts. And from there it'll continue. Alright, so those are the sequencer patch points: tempo, play, stop, reset, and hold. Our next one is envelope gate. This triggers your envelope. This is also an on or off, 3.2 volt. So I'm going to create an envelope here just so we have something to listen for. Now right now there's no sound coming out of the instrument, but if I apply more than 3.2 volts, it will activate our envelope. And then it decays away. I can set a faster attack. You can hear it. And it sustains as long as this is open, and then it decays. What I can also do is turn off sustain. And now it's just like holding down the key. Next we have VCA CV. This controls the volume of the instrument. If I apply 0, nothing's happening. As I add more, I'm increasing the output volume. If I set my VCA mode to on, this will also make it louder. Now, a really useful patch for this is your LFO, so that you get some changes in volume. If you do that really fast, you get amplitude modulation. Do it really slowly, you get tremolo. And our final in point is the LFO rate. right now I'm going to patch my LFO to modulate frequency. LFO frequency. Let's hold a note here. Maybe not so much. Now I can increase the LFO rate by adding voltage to it. And a really useful patch for this one is going to be keyboard CV sent to the LFO rate. So when you play low notes, you have a slow LFO, and when you have high notes, you have a fast LFO. All right, so in this video, we have explored all of these inputs, except for mix 1, mix 2, and the multiple, which we'll see more of in the next one. All right, I hope that was helpful. I know it helped me a lot, trying to find ways to explain each of these really helps me understand what I'm doing. It's very true. If you're having a hard time understanding something, figure out how to explain it to somebody else. All right, I'll see you in the next one.